Welcome back to another episode of the podcast From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I am your host, Chris Swick, and this podcast is all about sharing stories on mental health, addictions, ADHD, recovery, really anything anyone's afraid to talk about it. We talk about it on the show by sharing everyone's story. At the end of the day, I believe everyone's story is valuable. Does not matter what walk of life you come from. You're all welcome on my platform. So if you guys could head over to Apple Podcast and hit that 5-star, it really helps the show push it out there to everyone to, hear it and get that message out there that we're here to break the stigma. I'd love to introduce you my next guest, fellow podcaster of the Neurodivergent Nurse. It is Jami Fregeau. You want to let them know a little bit about you and what you're all about?
Baby, I'm the host of the Neurodivergent Nurse Podcast, which is a podcast all about ADHD with tips and tricks and how to navigate in a neurotypical world with your neurodivergency. So it's not just cut out for nurses. It's not all medical, but it's more about you and me and how we can make the world a little bit easier for ourselves.
How is your ADHD today? And what are some ways that
How is my
you cope
ADHD
with it in a
today?
fun
I took
way?
my medication, so it's good. Vyvanse.
Which medication are you on? Vyvanse? Okay. I use FoQuest myself, so I'm on 45 mils a day. It seemed to be the right fit. It isn't cheap, but it really, like the other ones I was on, just really wasn't cutting it because it's that 12-hour release.
Yeah, so Vyvanse too. I was diagnosed not just with ADHD, but also with severe social anxiety, which no one who has known me would have ever thought that would be my thing. But I definitely recognized it. My family recognized it. But the Vyvanse has also helped me out substantially with being able to talk to people and not feel that everyone dislikes you or maybe I didn't do something well. Just that negative self-talk that I used to have, that voice is much quieter now.
That's good to hear that it's much quieter. So what are some ways that you cope with it, cope with having your ADHD and stuff like that if you're having a bad day? What are some
I'm
positive things
a
for
mantra
you?
person. Depending on what is causing my bad day or the issues that I'm having, there's a couple like clusters of things that I read that make me feel a lot better. One, when I was just becoming a nurse, that I felt like nothing that I did was good enough. I had this whole huge story of my clinical instructors telling me that I didn't have what it took to be a nurse. The manager that I had said I would be a great floor nurse, but I wouldn't make it in the ICU. And I'm a neuro ICU nurse for about a decade, but now I do rapid response. And so there was something by Mother Teresa that I used to always read. And the very last line of it wasn't about you and them, anyways, but like just keep doing the good things. And that's what you really have to focus on. So I have that. The other thing that I do if I need my brain to be quiet and I have time to just escape and be still, I really enjoy painting. Painting is such a good release because it changes my focus where I have to think about what I'm trying to create. And there's something so amazing to see beauty that came from your fingertips. So just overall, those are my two go-tos.
Nice. I love art in general is just fun to do, whether it's creating this podcast and this podcast realm I'm on, or seeing sometimes just brings joy to me to see the art that my fiance creates with her photography and stuff, or it's things that you create or other artists in general create, music, drawing, those types of things. It's just amazing to see so many different
Mhm.
aspects of art and how it can uplift people. How
Right,
is your
I
mental health
feel
doing
like
today?
I am in such a good place. I was diagnosed with ADHD in December of 2020 at 36 years old. So it's a very late in life diagnosis, and my world has completely changed since that diagnosis because for the longest time, I always thought that I was lazy or I'm just a slob or there were all of these negative things that I told myself about what I didn't do that everyone else around me did. And I didn't understand that it had more to do with my brain than my lack of desire or the lack of motivation to be better because that was never it. I never enjoyed not being the perfect person, not being the person that people saw as shiny. And since I was diagnosed and starting to learn these ways that actually help me get over the issues with my executive dysfunction so that I can pick up things or I can keep things a little bit more neat and tidy, or just that I don't look at myself in such a negative way like I used to.
And what was it for you that sort of got you diagnosed with ADHD? Were there things going on in your life at that particular point that you were talking to
I
doctors or
had
psychiatrists or
a friend
psychologists or anything?
very gently asked me if I had ever sought a diagnosis for ADHD, and I was like, "No." I thought so many people that I misunderstood what ADHD really was. I misunderstood the presentation in women. I misunderstood what it was even for boys and for men, that it's not just hyperactivity and you're always being driven by a motor. And so I was like, no, I've never sought that. That's not a me thing. I'm energetic.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions out there, that it's always just go and they never slow down and they're full of piss and vinegar. But that's not the case at all. You know what I mean? Some days my ADHD plays tricks on me and I have no motivation and those types of things. But then I hyper focus on certain things and those types of things. There's so many
And the more that
points
I
and
started looking
things to it.
into what it really was, these boxes started getting checked. And I thought, oh my goodness. So, absolutely, I really dove into finding someone. I live in the United States. And in the state that I live in, I found a psychiatrist that they really deal with ADHD. And so we went through a whole process. I had to fill out tons of paperwork. I had to have a family member fill out a lot of questions about me too. And then started that whole process where I was diagnosed.
And once you were diagnosed, and was it going through trial and error with different medications
I
for you,
stuck
or
with
and
back
one you've stuck with?
originally after the diagnosis and they started me on the medication. I had an appointment 1 month later, and then I've gone back every 3 months after that where they reevaluate. So we've upped the dosage once or twice since I started. And I've also been added, it's pretty much Ritalin, but I wake up about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work. I work an hour and a half from my home. So I take my medication early, but then I work 12, 13-hour shifts. But about 3 o'clock, I would just hit a wall, wouldn't feel like charting anymore. And those gears were just like really running slow. So we added that. And that I take on the days that I work around lunchtime. So those have really been the only changes with my medication.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's you got to find the right mixture, the right one that works for you. There's lots of trial and error over the years for myself as well. And we found this one. He's got this 12-hour release caplet, and it's really helped me out on the long days too. Like it keeps me more focused at work. I can really see a difference in my work and the quality and those types of things, and just staying focused on the task at hand as well. Not taking too much on either. If you don't get everything done that day, it's okay. You can wait till the next day. It doesn't have to, you don't have to get all anxious and worked
And
out
I
that
think
you didn't
I
get
was
everything
pretty
done that day.
fortunate that the psychiatrist, I felt like she was a carbon copy of myself. So she really understood me because she had so many similar experiences in the ways that she saw herself. She also has ADHD. And I think that was part of the reason why it was so easy to put me on the right medication from the get go because it works so well for her as well.
No, for sure. And it's nice that you have that relationship and they've actually been in people's shoes that I don't want to say suffer, have ADHD or live with it on a day-to-day basis. So it's nice that you have that connection there. It's not someone that's just gone to school and has a piece of paper saying they
Hmm.
can do this job or whatever, but they've actually lived that life. They've been down that path that we've been down. So it's nice to
Definitely. I
talk
was
to someone
crying.
that's on the same
And
page as you too.
after I went through like there was a test that I had to do for 20 minutes that also helped diagnose me when I was there. And when she was talking about things and she was saying, "Yeah, and I'm sure that you feel this way and you've always felt that way." I literally had tears coming down my face. I felt like such a baby crying in her office because for once I truly felt understood and seen and heard that it was okay to be me. And the way that I was, there wasn't anything wrong with it.
Nothing wrong whatsoever at all. But it must be different though for our partners that don't have ADHD, because I know my partner said it's a chore living with you some days. So how does your partner cope and deal with your ADHD for
He's
someone from
he's
an
a middle
outsider's
school
perspective?
math teacher. So I think it's similar to what you and I were just talking about with what he sees with ADHD in middle schoolers. So he also didn't really believe the correlation there. And before I got diagnosed, leading up to my appointment, he had a lot of reservation because he felt like that anything that I did that wasn't well, that I would just blame it on ADHD. And I thought, you've known me for years. That's not who I am. I take all of the burden and blame of everything. That's just my personality. He struggles in some ways because if we have an argument over something, I have learned because I have those hot emotions, right? You make me mad. I just go from 0 to 10, like, off the scale. And I've learned that I have to remove myself from that situation, from that conversation, take time to allow me to process and to think and not just react so heated. And that's tough for him because if we have an issue, he just wants to go ahead, work it out, and I can't do that, and I'm a little flighty from time to time, so I'm sure that's annoying, but over the most part, he's done really well with it, but I've also listened to a lot of podcasts and sent him articles about how partners with ADHD being the partner, how they can talk to us better, how they can make the things that they need known in a more kind way so that we're more receptive to it. So he's done good. This whole process has been good for both of us.
Yeah, and like my fiance and myself too, we've worked together. Like she's even sent me articles. This is what it's like dealing with you. And she's learned and adjusted to the way she talks to me and talking calmly, like you were just saying and stuff like that. Cause I will get worked up if it gets really loud. I don't know what it is, if I just have sensories to loud people talking, because maybe I was yelled at a lot as a child and stuff like that. But so those types of things put me into that flight mode almost, or retreat or defensive mode too. And I'm still working on being less defensive than I usually, and it's a work in progress. One day at
Yeah,
a time, I
I'm a
think.
pretty defensive person as well. I don't, like I said, take on everything, but I don't like for it to always be my fault. I mean, no one likes that, but I am just so sensitive to rejection or so sensitive to, like I said earlier, not being that just shiny person and being human, really. It's tough. It's really tough.
What do you have a tip for everyone to being less defensive? What's some ways or some things that you've taught or been taught through your
I
stuff like that about being less defensive?
As a whole, like I said, I don't think that it's something that we can turn off. I could be wrong. I'm only a nurse, and I'm definitely not a nurse when it comes to ADHD. But I think that we are very sensitive to those things, and I don't think that will necessarily change, but how we respond to it can change. And our response will show whether we start to spiral and get worse, or if we can recover and take on a whole different thought associated with it. So for me, like I just said, instead of getting so defensive and wanting to prove why it's not my fault, take time away so that you can think about it. The other thing that I believe is really important for all of us with ADHD is to show ourselves grace because we so often give that grace freely to strangers, to our friends, to our family, but we don't give it to ourselves. And if I heard someone talk to anyone that I love the way that I talk to myself, I would have nothing to do with them. I would not think that they were a good human. So, why do we do that to ourselves? And when we start seeing that and recognizing that we also deserve that, I think it changes our response to it and that it doesn't let us go into deep holes of feeling terrible.
Yeah. No, I definitely get what you're saying for sure.
So I think that those are ways to, even though we're going to feel like we need to be defensive, that if we can just start changing the way that we see ourselves and allow ourselves to be human, to be at fault from time to time, then I think that'll help our response to it.
Oh, 100%. And learn how to respond and take that time away. If you need a break, and then even communicate that though to your partner or whoever you're talking to, that you're going to step away and just assess everything that's gone on. And that's what I've learned through therapy as well, to step back, assess what was said, even say it back, repeat the question back just so you're on the same page with your partner or whatever. If you have to do that, I've been learning to do those types of things as well. So it's been very, helpful to lessen my defensiveness, if you want to put it that way. But it's also about my circle of control because I can be very assumptive some days too and assume, but assuming does not get you anywhere. That's for sure. It's all about the circle of control. You can only control your actions and reactions to others and what you do, and you can't control their actions or reactions. You can only control that little circle in the middle.
And that's such a difficult concept to really grasp because I like to be in control of everything because I know that if it's at my hands that it can be done well and thoroughly and it's so hard to let go of that control.
Oh, 100%. It is so hard to let go of that control. I swear, sometimes I feel I need to have control of everything, but I'm really learning that you don't need to have control of everything in life at all, which is so true. So, let's talk about your podcast a little bit. How did you come up with the name? I know what neurodivergent is. What was it that sort of drove you to come up with a podcast and that sort of platform and build that platform on social media and stuff?
Well, I have another podcast that I put on the back burner now for the last almost a year, and it was first do no harm. So I kind of went through all of the difficulties of figuring out the volume and the sounds and editing and all of that. And I loved podcasting so much, but as I was thinking because you know how our brains work, right? Once I got the diagnosis, I just could not stop reading everything there was to learn about ADHD. And it was a whole new world. And I thought, if I had no idea that I was neurodivergent, then I bet there's other people who don't realize it either. And while I'm learning these tips, why don't I just share this in an easy format for other people while they're driving to work? And I love research, but I also realize not everyone else does. So that's really how it came about to learn the things that help me that hopefully can help other people as well.
And where can they find that show and find you if they'd like to? You also have a Patreon as well.
Yeah. You can find the neurodivergent nurse. My biggest place is on Instagram as far as social media goes. I, daily, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's inspirational. A lot of times is those aha moments that people tell me that they had no idea was related to neurodivergency. And anywhere that you listen to podcast, you can find the neurodivergent nurse. So whether it's iTunes or Google Podcast, or I don't know, I use some kind of weird podcasting thing myself, but they can do that. Yeah.
And you've learned so much through your research as well, having people on your show. I've been a guest on your show, and it was a pleasure going on your show and getting the feedback you were getting about our episode, which is very nice to hear as well.
That was a great time. But I couldn't imagine after I listened to your podcast, knowing that you were coming on, I looked so forward to it because you just have such a great and infectious personality and so easy to talk to.
Well,
Love talking to you.
thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that a lot. And guys, go head over and subscribe to her podcast, The Neurodivergent Nurse. It gets me through some good workouts some mornings too. It's funny, it's informative, and just go hit her up. Follow her on Instagram at the Neurodivergent Nurse as well. So, what is a good piece of advice you could give non-ADHD people about ADHD? People that will have and live with it.
I think that the most important advice for people who do not have ADHD is you are likely not going to know the most about ADHD because there have been people who have even come onto Instagram and say, "You if you just got up and stopped being so lazy, you could whatever." I think it's really important to know that just because you read something doesn't mean that you're an expert on what I go through in my day-to-day life, or my struggles. And even people who do have ADHD, just because one thing works for you and that you are able to conquer something doesn't mean that it is not a very difficult thing for someone else. We're all different, even though we have neurodivergent people have very many similarities because of our brains. We're still different people. We're still individuals, and your story is your story. And what works for you, you don't have to validate that to anyone. And I think that it's terrible for people who don't have ADHD that they feel like they need to tell us how we should operate. That's tough. And just know that we are going to be flighty. We are hard work to be with from time to time, but we have really great intentions. And we have everyone that I've met, we have great souls and we just want to be supported just like we support everyone else as well.
I like that you say that. Like, not everything that I do, you do, or others do, or online means that your is going to work for you, like you said. And I love that you say that. It's so true, though. Like, what works for you may not work for me, and that's okay. But we can learn from one another and learn what's going to work for others and stuff like that and feed off one another. And that's what I love. And just using our brains and we're all unique in our own ways. Doesn't matter if we have ADHD, whether we have an addiction problem, mental health issues, mental illnesses, we're all human. Let's support one another, like you just said.
Yeah. And your struggle is valid. Whatever your struggle is, it is valid because it belongs to you. And if you feel pain or fear or whatever else, those are real emotions and you're allowed to feel those things. You are allowed to be vocal about the negative things that you feel or things that impact you in a non positive way. And don't ever let anyone make you feel any differently because it belongs to you and you deserve space in this world. And so do your feelings.
And all your feelings should be validated as well. You know what I mean? But make sure you do it in a positive way. There's ways to tell people, that they're doing something wrong or it hurts you and stuff like that, but you can do it in a positive manner. You don't have to be aggressive about it and those types of things because everyone's feelings matter to me. So take that into account too.
And like I was saying earlier, so many of us have RSD. That's the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, very common amongst those of us with ADHD. So even your communication, if we are worth being around, if we are someone that you enjoy having in your life, then try to put in the effort to talk to us about things that do bother you, that we do, but talk to us in a manner that we don't automatically shut down or shut off because we are very receptive people. But as we were talking about earlier, when we become so defensive, we can't digest anything that you're saying. So it may take extra work as being a non neurodivergent person, being a neurotypical person, to even communicate the problems or the difficulties that we put in your world as well.
100%. I know I don't make it easy some days for my partner and vice versa, but we've learned to grow with one another. Some of my quirks she absolutely hates, but it's who I am. And I may not change those, but I can learn from my mistakes and know how to better myself. If, like you said, proper communication, though, talking to us, not properly, there's no different way. I guess there's many different ways to talk to someone, but if you calmly approach them and let them know that something's bothering you in a positive way, it's easier to work through it with that person.
And think about how dull your fiance's world would be. She loves beauty, she's into photography. How dull would her world be without your presence, your ADHD brain? Even though it's so much to handle, I'm willing to bet it is a blast to live in the gravity of your world too. And I feel the same way about my husband. I think that I bring a lot more excitement, and it's not always good excitement, but
No,
it
it
would be
does.
boring without us.
It's definitely not good excitement. Sometimes I have way too much energy in the morning where she's just let me wake up and get my first coffee, and before you start going off with all your ideas or what we need to do and all those types of things, where I'm just get up and let's go. Not all the time, but some days.
Does she try to pull you back down when your ideas start just
Oh yeah, she's the yin
rapid
to
fire?
my yang. She says that's her exact quote. I'm the yin to your yang. I have to bring you back to this place we live on called Earth some days because I have some wild ideas, and sometimes it's just one thing at a time, Chris. Patience and just take it easy.
And I love whenever they give that advice. They're like, "Okay, one thing at a time. Let's just focus on this." But how? Tell me how, because I have so many things that are going on that I need to grab. I feel like sometimes, do you know those money machines that you used to step in and you have like dollar bills flying all over and you have 15 seconds to grab as many and you get to keep it? That's what I feel like my thoughts are. I feel like my brain is in a money machine and the thoughts are just the bills that are flying all around. And I'm just trying to grab any one to pull it close to me.
I feel you some days with the way my life rolls, but you know, I'm learning one day at a time to just focus on one task at a time too. It's not have 60 different tabs open on the computer. One task at a time. I use my reminder list on my phone. Hey Siri,
Mhm.
remind me to do this. I have reminders that are set daily because on my health and nutrition journey I'm on. I weigh myself every morning. It's not that I'm not by any means following some diet culture, but this is how I can work on my progress and my health and fitness and stuff too. But yeah, it's just like all these different reminders.
And we're such visual people. When you're talking about the health and fitness and getting on the scale every day, I feel like we have to be able to see or measure those changes. If you can look back and say, 30 days ago, I was here and here's the progress. If we don't see the progress, then we're done. Like we need that dopamine to know that we're doing the right thing and that we're on the right track, or else it just falls to the wayside.
It sure does. So that's why I love visuals. I like that you say that. Visuals are huge for me, especially like doing the podcasting and stuff and doing the video. And I get to see the finished product. It's just amazing. I did.
And you're from the last time that you were on the Neurodivergent Nurse and we talked about editing and stuff, just with the visuals, my my podcast editing, even though I keep messing it up, has completely changed, is so much more enjoyable because you have, even in the world of podcasting, found ways that the visuals help with editing the podcast. And huge thank you. You do such a phenomenal job in all ways, even helping out fellow podcasters to
And
do
then
better.
that's what the whole world's about. That's what my purpose is in life, helping others out with the stories I share on my show, helping others out if they have a question. I don't mind helping at all. Maybe there's some things in the future that are going to happen. Time's not free all the time either. So maybe I'll start a consulting firm. Who knows? In my neurodivergent brain where it'll go some days.
I think that's fantastic. I'll subscribe.
But yeah, before we go though, what area of life do you think you lack discipline in?
This was pre diagnosis and post diagnosis. Anything outside of work. I passionately love my job. I do rapid response now. I've always loved my job. Like I said, I did neuro ICU for about 10 years. I am such a perfectionist whenever it comes to life inside the hospital. I needed the job field of the neuro ICU where I had to document every single tiny change, where you had to use intuition, you had to do that. Everything had to be absolutely perfect or someone could die. And I love that. But the minute that I walk through the hospital doors to the outside, it's like everything just melted away. So, yeah, my struggle is like at home to do things, to pick up, to not sit down and want to paint for the entire day, but to actually get things done that no one's going to see but me, but it still needs to be done. That is a very difficult area for me to have discipline in.
I am right on the same page with you, especially things that need to be done around the home. Whether that's another reminder on my phone to do the dishes and give a quick sweep so in the morning, and it just helps out your partner. But I really struggle with those, like putting clothes away, doing those little tasks around the house. I don't know why I have no discipline with it, but I
Like
get to
dysfunction. That's why. I started this thing, Chris, that I would love for anyone listening to this episode of the podcast. And you guys, if you have similar struggles to us, I highly encourage you to try this too and just see how it works. But on most days, I have a little bullet journal. I'll put down my to do, I'll have a brain dump, but I also make a circle so it looks like a clock. And then I call that my power hour. And I divide that into time to do things that I really don't want to do. So maybe I'll do yoga for 20 minutes. And then after I do yoga, the next part of my power hour, I shade in because I like to color. I like for it to actually be visual. It looks like a pie chart. Then 15 minutes, I'm going to tidy up the kitchen and I'm going to give myself 5 minutes for a drink. But put little things that you enjoy along with the things that you really don't, like laundry, that you're going to fold clothes for 10 minutes. And just no matter what happens, you do that one power hour every single day. And that has really helped me out a lot.
That's a good idea, actually. I never thought of it as like that. Maybe I'll start doing that too, like the bullet journaling and put gratitude list in a little brain dump. But that power hour could actually help me out with my career and doing little things around the house too. That's a great idea.
Yeah, an hour
Like,
seems like so long too to me because I'm like, I don't want to go for a 30 or 40-minute run. It feels like an all day task. But when I sit down and I get to plan it out, which also gives me a lot of pleasure, and to see it broken down into such small time frames, it feels like it's able to be conquered by me.
100%.
Yeah, let me know if you try it and if it works out for you.
I'm definitely going to try this and look into that. So thank you so much for that, Jamie.
Yeah,
But
sure.
before we go, where can everyone find you on Instagram again?
The Neurodivergent Nurse is my Instagram username. And I also started a Facebook group just for people. I have a lot of people who will send me private messages on Instagram. Like you said, I'm always happy to answer questions when I have time or to help out or to, if you just need somebody to vent to as well about something that was frustrating to you, I'm here for you. But I started this group where it's a very safe and it's a private community so we can all vent to each other or we can all share similar tips. So go check that out as well. It's very new, just started the last couple of weeks. And you can also
Now, is
find
that
me
called
on
the Neurodivergent Nurse as well on
Mhm.
Facebook?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
So you actually have to type it in because it's a private group, so it's not easily found.
There you go, everyone. If you want a place to vent and with like-minded individuals, head over to Jamie's Facebook page, The Neurodivergent Nurse, and type that in. I'll drop all the links and everything everywhere the notes to the show. But I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Take care. But before we go, everyone, again, hit that subscribe button. We're on YouTube as well, from the depths of darkness to the light of success. And hit that subscribe button. All podcast episodes will be up there in video format as well for your viewing pleasure. But I hope you have a great rest of your day, Jamie, and you take care and stay safe.